I'm Lori from the Produce Moms, and we are continuing our COVID-19 video interview series. We are getting a lot of consumer inquiry about various topics at the Produce Moms, stuff that we've never really talked about before because we didn't know our audience necessarily even cared about these topics. One topic that is extremely important to agriculture, something that for years we have been working on this in terms of political action. I really think it dominates the dialogue in agriculture around political action, and the topic is farm labor. It really took me off guard when we got some response, but then when I take into consideration what's happening in mass media as it relates to the coverage of the H2A labor program, I thought, you know what, we need to find one of the top experts in America to talk and share insights with our audience about the topic of H2A labor. Dante Galeazzi, a dear friend of mine, someone who's taught me a lot. He is the president of the Texas International Produce Association.
You started talking about labor and how important it is and how long we've been working on it. Really, here in the United States, agricultural labor or guest worker labor is nothing new, and it's been a conversation for 120 years. The first program instituted by the U.S. to bring over workers from a foreign country was in 1913 or 1915, I think. This is not like it's something that was dreamed up yesterday.
In other words, this is not a new issue because of the pandemic. Do farmers have the labor needed to harvest their crops?
No, they don't have enough of the labor needed. And this was even before COVID-19. This has been an issue for at least 100 years that we just have not had enough folks available to come and harvest agriculture. And we've seen in the last few years the explosion of the H2A program, which, by the way, let me mention, is really the only program available to bring in non-U.S. residents to work here in the United States. So we are very dependent on some workforce. To get back to the question at hand, we didn't have enough people available to help us harvest crops as it was. Now that we have COVID-19 happening, we've got even fewer people, and a lot of the farmers, at least in my region, are reporting that they've got harvest crews that are probably 70% of the normal level that they would have in a non-COVID-19 pandemic situation.
So everyone who's listening, you know that Texas is the state within the United States that you have to coalesce with Mexico.
Yeah.
Our whole industry does, but Texas in a big way has to.
We get approximately $7 to $8 billion worth of fresh produce from Mexico every year that crosses just through Texas. And then that produce is distributed throughout the United States and even up into Canada.
And when you talk about your members or the farmers that you're working hand in hand with at Texas International Produce Association, a lot of these are growers that farm in both countries, right?
Yeah.
They go through the valley. Their harvest follows the sun.
And there's a lot of people that have those dual country operations where they'll have operations in Texas, they'll have operations in Mexico. They depend on both pieces to help complement their program. So that way shoppers throughout North America can go to a grocery store 12 months out of the year and get any fresh produce product they want.
It's so important. And there's no way that we're going to accept a disruption to that. We have grown as a country to expect that kind of food security and availability. Knowing that, what has the Department of Labor and the USDA done from a legislation standpoint as it relates to H2A so that we can mobilize this workforce and harvest the fields? Because just like the crops aren't going to sell themselves, they're certainly not going to harvest themselves out of that field. And one thing about specialty crop agriculture, we can't rely on mechanized labor the way other sectors of ag can. We require that human element when we're harvesting the crops. So explain a little bit about what are we doing from a legislation standpoint?
That's very well said. Specialty crops, fresh fruits and vegetables, we just don't have the mechanization available for harvesting things like grain, corn, hay, sugar, those types of yields. A vast majority of our crop is still hand harvested, requires that manual labor element because of the sensitivity of the product. So what are we seeing legislatively on H2A? Well, very recently what we saw is that the U.S. consulates and U.S. embassies in foreign countries ended up closing their offices and stopped visa processing services for fear of COVID-19. Very sensible, but the problem is we had all these pending H2A applications because as we start spring, really April month is the beginning of it, the U.S. begins their domestic growing season. And so what we see is as April goes on, we have this need for the foreign workforce to come to this country to help us harvest all of our domestically grown crops. What we saw very recently is that the US government helped put in place these interview waivers. So they're still going to review the applications, but there used to be an in-person interview requirement. They're not going to do that. They're thinking of other programs. They're going to do some phone call interviews. They're still reviewing the paperwork, but the point is they're trying to get the H2A applications flowing. We've also seen within this administration, I believe it's the last 10 months, we've seen a lot of changes to H2A where they're really trying to streamline to the benefit of the grower. And Lori, let me tell you, the reason why they're doing this is because H2A has always been a very burdensome program, and it's not a program that your average farmer can access. So a lot of times they have to hire a third party just to be able to fill out the forms. They have to hire a lawyer to make sure they're doing everything right. They've got to hire another person who can help them understand housing costs, food, how to set up the transportation, etc. So this isn't as easy as, oh, I need 5 guys, send them to me. There's a whole lot that goes into this. And so the administration has been very helpful in trying to make this program more user-friendly, so that way we can do a better job at getting more folks here, getting them to work, and then being able to get them back home, so that way then they can return in future seasons to help us with the harvest.
When we say that they're making the changes to turn it into a more grower-friendly program, that certainly is not at the expense of society safety or deregulation to the point where there's a threat. No. And those are some of the things that consumers are coming to us with now, confused, when they see things like, oh, they're just scaling back all regulations. It's like anyone can come in. Obviously, it's a hypersensitive society right now. We really have nothing else to do but watch the news. On a topic like this, I know simply from being in the room when people like you and other thought leaders in our industry on this topic are talking on the Hill, the whole story is not being told.
That's right. That is a misconception that they're scaling back any kind of reviews. If they said, okay, we'll get an application and we commit to getting back to you in 8 weeks, well, holy cow, you could lose an entire field in 8 weeks. Yeah. You could lose your entire crop in 8 weeks. So what we're seeing is that they're saying, okay, we're going to do more things in 30 days. And instead of having to fill out 3 different forms for Department of Labor, Homeland Security, etc., you're going to fill out one form, and that form is going to be good for all 3 entities. So that's more what I'm talking about, is streamlining, making an efficient system. There's still a lot of background paperwork that goes into applying for an H2A. So believe me, there's no deterioration of the review process.
That's one thing that we need to go on record about, is the highly skilled labor that we are sourcing, because people, I think, are picturing these you-pick farms that are almost hobbyist or vacation destination things. They're sending us emails at the Produce Mom saying, we would like to volunteer. It gives me and my family something to do. We can go out in the field and pick some fruit. The answer is no. You and I both know that the answer to that is no, but we have to explain to people, and I've got some footage on our YouTube channel. This is a highly skilled labor class. This is not something where you can bring your children and just pick fruit for fun.
Yeah, let me first off say that as someone who actually worked in the field and harvested for 7-8 years, yeah, it's nothing like what you see at a U-pick farm. And just to give you a scope or size of a farm, your house is probably built on about 1/8 of an acre. Mm-hmm. Most fresh fruit operations, when you go in, you're going to go in and it's going to be a planting of 70, 80, 150 acres of an item. This isn't something you go in and you volunteer and, oh yeah, we'll get it knocked out in 1 or 2 hours. This is something where an entire crew, 60, 70 people, take probably a week to get through a field, depending on the commodity. So there's a lot that goes into it. Plus, you've got to be able to identify, let's take apples, for example. You got to know what color the apple is. Is it the right size? You can't just pull it off the tree. There's techniques to it to make sure that when you pick it, you're breaking it at the right part. You're not damaging the good that you're trying to get into the system, because who wants to buy a bruised apple at the grocery store? So there's a lot that goes into this. Now, I will say, if people want to help, I guarantee you there's farmers out there that will take whatever help you can give them. So reach out to your local farmer, reach out to your local farmer's market, whoever. Agriculture needs help. We need hands, we need support. If you're willing to do it, let us know and we will guide you. And it may not make the most sense for you to get out in the field, but if you want to, I can't imagine people are going to say no. I will say this though, you can't bring your kids. That's child labor right there. That's going to get everyone in trouble. If kids are involved, it's a non-starter.
Okay, anything else you want to share on this topic or with our consumer audience today?
If it was as easy as getting U.S. citizens out there into the field, we would have done it already. Look at states like Washington, Idaho, and California. They're paying their farm workers anywhere from $17 to $23 an hour. It's just a matter of desire. We don't have enough U.S. citizens that desire to get out in the field and work as harvesters. So that's why it's so important that we have a program certified and approved by the U.S. government to bring in foreign citizens to work and help us with agriculture and feed North America.